welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Miller. I'm a stroke survivor still, and I'm a gratefully recovering alcoholic still. And that's what's most important in my life. Today's topic is sober grieving, and we'll just see how it goes. I typically write out my script, and of course I stray from it a lot, but I really just put some points down today and was just going to see what comes out. Some of the things that I've been thinking about this morning are how I do in fact have the tools in my life right now to help me with grief, sober. And I have hope in my life. I even bought those little star stickers. You know what? If you listen to my earlier episodes where I was talking about every day that I have hope, I'm going to put one of these star decals on my mirror. I have this mirror that I use as a whiteboard. It's like it's as big as me. It's a gigantic mirror. And so started putting these stickers every day that I felt hope. I would put a sticker on the mirror. Well, these freaking stickers were supposed to be like decals, not stickers. And so they stuck to the mirror and I had to scrub the heck to get them off. So I still have my stickers, but I don't stick them on my mirror anymore. But the point of that was to acknowledge when I was feeling the pain diminish and the hope grow. To acknowledge that so that I knew that things were getting better for me. Things are always okay. I learned that in my program. Things aren't gonna be okay. They're already okay. But sometimes it doesn't feel like it, And I would use those stars to remind myself that everything is okay and I'm healing. And as I deal with death my own way, I don't really know where to start. I epically fail at grieving. And unfortunately, I was told yesterday about the death of a colleague. So these are two individuals that worked in the same company that I used to work for. That one of them was like a big brother to me, and the other was a friend. And I worked with these people. I mean, the friend I knew my whole life, but he was one of my brother's best friends. And this woman, I worked with her for like 10 years, like when I would come visit, I would sit in her office and just talk to her. She was so nice and friendly. And so I found out yesterday that she passed away alongside her husband from carbon monoxide poisoning, and all three of her children are in ICU. And it's such a tragic and devastating story that it makes me not want to talk about it, because I don't want anybody else to feel the absolute unspeakable pain from thinking that a whole family, was hit like this. But this morning as I woke up, so last night before I went to sleep, I called my sponsor because I didn't even know how I was going to sleep last night. I was just I felt sick to my stomach. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what to do with the pain. And so I called my sponsor because I've learned in my program that I have got to talk. If I don't talk, it's going to go down into my dark place. And that dark place is where my craving for alcohol grows. So I called her. I told her about it. I felt awful having to tell such a tragic story. But I felt like I could go to sleep. And what I also learned from telling her was that she did not have a carbon monoxide detector in her house. And she said to me she was going to go get one today, right away. And I thought, this is why I need to tell the story. So when I was drinking, and I lived in West Virginia, one night, it was about 1:30 in the morning, I was drunk, and I walked down into my basement to check the laundry. And we used to have piles and piles of laundry. And I walked down there to see if I could, do the next load. Well, when I walked down there, there was this haze, and I smelled something burning. So I called 911. My heart was beating really fast. I was like, what do I do? What is this? Is this important enough to call 911? That's the stuff that we do. Just like when I was having my stroke. Is this important enough to go to the hospital? So I called 911. I said what I was experiencing. The person on the other line said to wake up my children and take them and my dog out and go sit in the car. So that's what we did. And my kids were very confused. I was confused. I was scared. They were scared. All the fire trucks came, and the ambulance. And so they went into the house while we sat, and the windows started opening to the house. And eventually I don't recall, because again, I had been drinking. I don't recall whether they came to my car or I just went back into the house. But what they ended up telling me was that the soot in my water heater was on fire, and my house had filled with carbon monoxide. And had I not gone down into the basement and saw what I saw, experienced what I experienced, none of us would have made it through the night from carbon monoxide poisoning. And I don't know that had ever really hit home to me, that it was real, that was a real tragic ending that I avoided, almost like my stroke. I've spent the last 2 years in denial that I had a stroke that could have taken my life. And I tried to just go back to work and act like everything was normal, even though I could barely manage and was dealing with a lot of pain. And my alcoholism. As I continue to stay sober and continue to lose people from the very disease that I have, I understand more and more that I'm living with something that a lot of people die from. The odds are against me. And that's why it's important that I grieve in a healthy way. Because my stroke is something that has passed and something that I need to live with, something that I can't change. That event where we had carbon monoxide in the house and we avoided a very, what could have been a very tragic ending to my family is something that has passed and that I accept and need to live with. My alcoholism is something that is not past. It's something that is always present. It's always present. And for that reason, I have to practice my program every single day. Hence the name of the podcast, Recovery Daily. Because with these things that happen in my life, and every day is different, I need to reconstruct the tools that I have, that I've been given by the program, to help me through. So coping with grief while staying sober. I woke up this morning and had a nice long conversation with my boyfriend about grief and about determining my grieving process and how there are just a couple constants in our life, and that is change and the fact that people are going to die. And my need to remain emotionally sober is stronger than ever right now. So I sought out this morning to listen to some advice about how to grieve. And I ran across this great woman that I had not run across before. And I hope that I pronounce her name right. It's Nora McInerny. And I'll put it in the show notes. And she has a TED Talk and she has a podcast, and she talks about dealing with death. And she had a few things happen all right on top of each other. She lost her father, she lost a child, and she lost her husband, all within 2 months. And so she has dedicated her life to helping others know how to grieve or learn how to figure out how they need to grieve, because we're all different. And one of the things that I would like to do is learn how to soften the impact of learning that I've lost somebody. And I don't know if that's possible or not, but there are some people that I learn have passed, and I will immediately start crying. There are other people that I learn that pass, and I don't cry for days, sometimes for weeks. And I remember when I lost a friend and neighbor of mine, before I got sober, that when another neighbor called me and told me that she had passed, I broke down almost screaming, because she was my friend and we had just hung out, and she was gone. She had a heart attack, is my understanding. And that reaction that I had was alcohol induced. It wasn't a healthy start to grieving. And that unhealthy grieving continued because I continued to drink. And what ended up happening was I took a couple days off, or a few days off. This was right before I hit rock bottom. This was my approach. This was my approach to rock bottom. And I ended up not going into work for a few days. And then on like the fourth day, I suited up to go to work, and I got right to the top of the mountain on Mission Road, and I pulled into the gas station, bought wine, and turned around and started coming home. I pulled into a parking lot, and I just cried, and I drank in this neighborhood that was under construction. There was nobody there. I called HR at work, and I told them, I can't do it. I can't come in. And he was understanding, and he said, you take the time that you need. Well, I feel like when I was telling him I can't do it, I can't come in, I was saying I can't ever come in. I can't ever do this. I can't do this anymore. That was what I was thinking when I was saying this to him. I could not cope. I had to drown it, which meant that when I drowned it with alcohol, that I was just smothering it down into my dark place. To never rise again was my hope, that I could keep enough alcohol on top of it that it would never come back up. Well, I ended up, fast forward, I ended up in detox because I, that's a part of the story that I've already shared. But grieving was one of the most painful parts of my active alcoholism. And I've talked about a gentleman that died when I was right after I graduated from college, and I didn't grieve his loss until I got sober. Probably a year after I got sober. So I was 43 that I actually started letting my insides catch up with my outsides. You know what I mean? We say that in the sobriety program, we say that when we start drinking, we stop growing and we stop maturing. And it's not until we get sober that we have to catch up. And it wasn't until then that I started catching up, that I started growing on the inside and being able to learn how to do these things, how to live sober. And grief is a part of that. It's getting comfortable with our inevitable demise. And we don't know who's going first, and it's scary. And I really struggle with figuring out what to do with that. I really do. I don't talk about it a lot because I don't know what to say about it. I started this podcast already saying, I don't have a script here. And I don't, because I don't know what to say. And that's when I decided I have to say what's in my heart. I can't say what's on the page. So some of the things that I learned from listening to this this woman, Nora McInerny, uh, was some of these things. So none of this is original to me. This is all her. But I wanted to share with you because I really enjoyed. She she makes she finds a way to provide humor to this topic that is extremely painful. And I really appreciated her non-obnoxious humor. It was right down my alley. So I really enjoyed it. So I'll put again information for her in the show notes. So some of the stuff that she talked about was, we learn in life that we need to move on. You know, I remember when this gentleman passed away, when I graduated from college or high school. I remember crying all the time. I was crying all the time. And I remember a loved one coming up to me and saying, "You're still crying about that?" And I was, because I didn't know how to grieve. That's why I was still crying about it. And I never did learn. I never learned how to grieve. I just drank. All the way back then. I remember sitting in college, my first year, sitting at the top of the stairwell, drunk, by myself, drinking, and thinking about this guy that I lost, and thinking about, should I just jump off the top of my dorm? Should I just walk out on the roof? I remember thinking that. Because I didn't know what to do with my pain. So, what I learned also from Nora is that our loved ones are still here. And this is something that I've grown to really believe since I got sober. And the reason why I've talked to you about how my higher power is a combination of what I call God, my understanding, but also of all the people who have passed in my life, my loved ones. They are my higher power. And I choose to talk to them. And I can be thought of as crazy. It's not like I'm sitting here waiting for them to answer. But I talk to them because I have to. I have to talk to that energy that is still left with me, that energy that they left with me. And I talk to it, and it helps me. So that's how, for me in my life, they're still with me. And one thing that I learned this morning from my boyfriend was that we get to choose our memories that we want to take with us throughout our lives. And I have this memory of my grandmother after she had had her stroke. And she was trying to talk to me, but I couldn't understand her. She couldn't form words. And I remember looking at her, and her eyes looked like they had everything in them that she wanted to say, but her mouth couldn't get it out. And it's a very sad memory for me because I said, "I'm sorry, Grammy, I can't understand you." And her eyes just shut in like frustration, not even frustration, like sadness and disappointment. And I have that memory with me. And I never wanted that memory to stay with me. But today, having had a stroke like her, I know that what happened after that is important. What happened after that is I started to stroke her hair, and I told her that I loved her. And this time she closed her eyes because she felt loved. And she knew exactly what I was saying. And she felt my touch exactly like I wanted her to. And so that's the part of the memory that I have now. But I choose that. I choose to carry that with me instead of stopping the memory right at the point where she's disappointed that I can't understand her. And what I learned from Nora is that my grief and moving forward in my life are not opposing forces. I don't have to get over it in order to move on. I get to take it all with me and heal along the way. And I don't have to keep it at the center of my life in order to take it with me. I can continue to put my stroke recovery and my sobriety at the center of my life and continue to recover. Because what's most important to me, again, Nora says this in one of her short episodes, that I need to take care of myself. That's what I need to put first, is myself. And, I've struggled with that as I've been in denial with my stroke recovery. But I'm learning how to put myself first. And it feels good. As painful as it is to grieve, when you've lived 42 years of your life not grieving, it actually feels good to feel and to hurt and to get to the other side. To be able to sit here and talk about it in this podcast is so healing. I would recommend it to anybody, even though I know not everybody would want to talk to the world about their pain. It helps me, and it's important for me to do it so that I can help just one single other human being. So I'm choosing not to put these deaths in the center of my life. I'm choosing to put my recovery in the center of my life and to carry my healing from these deaths with me. Nora talks about in another podcast about how when we are in our careers and we lose somebody that we love, depending on who that person is defined as in your life, you get a certain amount of time paid to grieve. And I remember this neighbor and friend of mine who passed away. I got 3 paid days to grieve. On the 4th day, I was not done grieving, to the point that I didn't think that I could even try to act normal at work. And that was my indication that I needed to not go into work. But I was never gonna be in a condition to work because I just kept drinking and not grieving. So the only way that, again, I was able to begin the grieving process for all of the people that passed before I got sober was to put down a drink, to put it down and to get sober, to go to detox and to start going to AA and talking about my pain. And what happened was I cried every time I shared because I had that much pain that I had been holding on to my whole life. I didn't talk about anything. It was learned, not because anybody mistreated me as I was growing up, or I had a loving family and everybody cared and cares very deeply about me. But I didn't know how to do it. And there is no how. There is no way. I can't ask somebody, how am I supposed to do this? How am I supposed to grieve? And so in sobriety now, only being 7.5 years sober, I'm new at this. I'm new at trying to figure out where to put it. Do I put it somewhere? Do I carry it with me? What do I do? What is the length of time it's supposed to take? Well, one thing I talked to my boyfriend about this morning is that I shouldn't let it take a year and a half like I did with my friend that died a year and a half ago in January. I couldn't listen to music for a year and a half. And I mean that literally. I could not listen to music. I as soon as it would come on, I would start crying immediately. So what did I do? I chose to not listen to music for a year and a half. I stopped. I completely stopped listening to music because every song, I knew this guy my whole life. And he was a guy that I was very much in puppy love with for a long time. And every song reminded me of him. And as I was growing up, he was in these different parts of my life. And those parts of my life were different decades. So every decade of music made me cry. And so I attached my grieving to music. And I just stopped. That was like I don't know. I was refusing to grieve. And by not listening to music, I didn't have to. I didn't have to feel the pain. And then I decided that I was going to run and listen to music and let whatever needed to come out of me come out. And that is when I finally started grieving. That day that I ran and listened to music. And it was ugly. It was very ugly. I was sobbing while I was running, and I'm sure people saw me, but I didn't care because it was like I was this sopping, heavy sponge that needed to be wrung out because I was just starting to just drip, and so I just ran. I just kept running around this gigantic soccer field. It was the Potomac Sportsplex for any of you who are around the Sterling area. I just kept running around 3 soccer fields, and until I didn't have any more tears left. And I've been listening to music ever since. So now I'm currently unemployed, and due to my neurological vision impairment left by my stroke, I'm free to grieve as long as I want, right? Well, I'm not. I'm not. Not if I want to be healthy and I want to be emotionally sober. And I want to focus on my recovery. Because the longer that I take to package this pain in a way that I can carry it with me through my life and have it reveal itself as experience, strength, and hope, the longer that takes, the longer I'm standing still in my own life. And none of these people who have passed would want me to do that. I've talked recently about my commitment to removing worry, remorse, and morbid reflections so that I may be of usefulness to others. And by removing morbid thoughts, to me, this means accepting and letting go of what I can't change. Not replaying the last moments of these people's lives over and over in my head. That's the morbidity that I marinate in. Grief is one of the rare things in my life that I don't try to be an overachiever at. I shut down, I give up, and I'm heavy from the inside out. I have found that the more I say I'm okay when I'm not, the more I hurt. And Nora talks about being honest. The more that I say I'm not okay, that I feel terrible, the more I'm allowing myself to heal and grieve. I remember when my employment ended. It's been only a month. And I remember talking to one of my staff members, and I went out for a walk, and she said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "I'm wrecked." And when I said that, I just started crying in a way that was healing. And she just listened. And sometimes I feel like I don't want to tell somebody that I'm wrecked, or that I feel terrible, or that I'm sad, because I don't want to put them in the position where they feel like they have to know what to say back. I feel like that's not fair to the other person. You know, isn't that interesting? That at the time that I'm not feeling good, that I'm thinking about saving the other person from feeling uncomfortable. And there are times that I have got to stop trying to take care of other people, trying to make sure everybody else is okay. That I need to just be sad and grieve and be a wreck and get ugly. I'm always talking about how everything is an opportunity to grow, you know, that these things that happen, we have to find the growth. And what I learned today in these podcasts that I listened to and this TED Talk from Nora is that I don't have to grow from this. It's okay if I remain exactly the same. I don't have to pull out some inspiring new perspective on life from this. All I have to do is stay sober. And I know that staying sober and present is where serenity is. So I'm going to keep that at the center of my life. Thanks for listening to the Recovery Daily podcast. To connect with me online, find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, or visit recoverydailypodcast.com. The best way you can help is to share, like, follow, and comment. If this topic resonated with you, please share it with a loved one. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.